The dimly lit, smoky haze of the club swirled around me as I surveyed the room from my usual corner booth, a vantage point that afforded me both control and anonymity. My fingers tapped a rhythm on the cold, metallic table, echoing the pulse of the neon-lit city outside. My gang, the Midnight Serpents, operated out of this joint, and tonight, the club was alive with the seductive allure of the underworld. The thumping bass reverberated through the air, making the entire room pulsate. A sea of colorful LED tattoos adorned the patrons, revealing their allegiances, secrets, and hidden desires. Tonight, like every night, I was on the prowl. A man in my position needed more than just power. He needed distraction. And there was no shortage of that here. The club was my fortress, a place where my word was law and my desires were indulged. I ordered a glass of top-shelf whiskey, sipping it slowly, savoring the burn. The woman on stage, a new addition to the usual lineup of dancers, captivated my attention. She moved with a grace that defied the chaos of the city that surrounded us, like a swan navigating through a sea of vipers. Her choice of attire was modest by club standards, but that's what set her apart. She wore a sleek silver bodysuit that gleamed under the neon lights, accentuating her every curve. It was a stark contrast to the skimpy, augmented outfits of the other dancers. Her movements were elegant, an intriguing mix of sensuality and restraint, a dance that hinted at a hidden world of mystery. I couldn't help but be drawn to her. Her presence was magnetic, and as I watched her, my impulse to have her in my company grew stronger. In the business I ran, the power of attraction could be a deadly tool. I signaled to one of my loyal lieutenants, Marco, and whispered in his ear, "Find out who she is, Marco. I want to meet her." Marco nodded and disappeared into the shadows, blending in with the patrons who reveled in the night. My fingers traced the outline of the cybernetic enhancements beneath my jacket, hidden from casual view. As the night unfolded, I continued to watch the mysterious dancer, my emotions a swirling mix of curiosity and intrigue. The club, known as Neon Noir, was a haven for those who thrived in the shadows. The name was fitting, as the dimly lit establishment seemed to be a place where secrets were not just kept but celebrated. The neon signs that adorned the club's entrance hummed with an eerie, almost hypnotic glow. As the night unfolded, Marco returned with the woman I'd been fixated on. Her smile was enchanting, a silent invitation to a world filled with mysteries. She knew the rules of the game just as well as any of the other dancers did, understanding that her presence came with expectations. Her slender fingers delicately lifted a glass to her lips, her gaze never leaving mine. The amber liquid inside swirled in her glass, mirroring the dance of lights that enveloped us. I extended my hand, offering an unspoken invitation. She accepted with a graceful nod, setting her drink aside, and we made our way to the private lounge, an enclave within the heart of Neon Noir. The lounge was my sanctuary, a place where my instincts had shaped every corner. Low, crimson lighting painted the room in an eerie warmth, revealing a collection of antique weaponry that adorned the walls. The chairs were plush and inviting, but beneath the opulence lay an unspoken understanding of the brutal world that existed just outside. Once inside, the silence between us was almost deafening, the weight of our unspoken intentions hanging in the air. The woman was an enigma, her beauty unlike any other I'd encountered in this unforgiving city. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking softly, and fixed my gaze on her, waiting to see what lay behind that beguiling smile. Before we get to the more physical aspects of our evening, I began, my eyes never leaving hers. I'd like to know the name of the captivating dancer who's managed to hold my attention all night. Her response was as captivating as her presence. She extended a hand, offering a glass of champagne, her hips swaying in perfect harmony with the pulsating music. It was a silent dance, a form of communication that spoke volumes in the world we inhabited. I accepted the glass, not breaking eye contact, and raised it in a silent toast before taking a sip. The bubbles tickled my senses, adding to the electrifying atmosphere of neon noir. This woman, with her grace and allure, had a way of drawing me in, and I couldn't deny the attraction I felt. It was a game, one we were both well-versed in, and I was eager to see how it would play out. Her name remained a mystery, and my attempt to learn it was abruptly interrupted. As I tried to ask her once more, she pressed her soft lips against mine, igniting a surge of electricity that coursed through my body. The sensation was intoxicating, a dangerous mix of desire and intrigue. But as our kiss deepened, a disorienting dizziness began to creep over me. It was as though the world around us started to blur and warp like a twisted neon dream. I was drawn to her, and yet an overwhelming weariness swept over me, leaving me powerless. I stumbled back and collapsed onto the plush bed within the private lounge, succumbing to an irresistible urge to sleep. Was it the champagne? The kiss? Or something else entirely? The answer remained elusive as my consciousness slipped away, surrendering to the unknown. I awoke the next morning, the dimly lit lounge bathed in an eerie silence that seemed to mock my vulnerability. The memory of the previous night's encounter with the mysterious woman flooded back into my consciousness. As I glanced around, it was evident that my private sanctuary had been thoroughly ransacked. My hand reached instinctively for my gun, only to discover that it was gone. Panic surged through me as I realized the extent of her intrusion. She had looted my room, taking not only my weapons but also cracking the safe that held my most confidential documents. The digital trail of her intrusion on my private computer was evident, and I cursed myself for letting my guard down. I staggered to my feet, my head throbbing from a night of restless sleep. The woman had outsmarted me, exploiting my moment of weakness to her advantage. In the unforgiving world of the city's underground, such displays of vulnerability were punishable by loss. And she had played her cards with expertise. I had to find her, not just to recover what she'd taken, but to uncover the secrets behind her actions. The neon cityscape awaited beyond the window, casting a haunting glow over the urban jungle. It was time to unravel the enigma that was the woman who had stolen not just my possessions, but a piece of my pride as well. I reached for my secure communications device and dialed a number I had memorized long ago. It only took a few rings before a familiar voice answered. "Jason, what's the word?" It was Rico, my loyal hacker and second in command. I quickly filled him in on the events of the previous night, including the intrusion into my private files and the theft of my weapons. Rico was silent for a moment, processing the information. "Jason, I've got some good news and some bad news," he finally said. "The good news is, I placed an impenetrable digital lock on those files. Even if she has them, she won't be able to access the data. They're safe." I breathed a sigh of relief, grateful for Rico's expertise. "And the bad news?" I prompted. Rico continued. "The bad news is, we still need to find this woman and figure out what she's after. I need everything you know about her, any lead, any connection." I nodded, my mind racing as I considered my next steps. "I'm on it, Rico. I'll start with the owner of Neon Noir, find out everything I can about how she ended up there." With that, I ended the call and prepared to face the owner of the club, determined to uncover the first piece of the puzzle. That was the mysterious woman who had infiltrated my life. I met with the owner of Neon Noir in his dimly lit office, a room that oozed authority and mystery. He reclined in a leather chair behind a grand desk, his gaze unwavering as I questioned him about the woman. "She arrived just yesterday," he explained, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "Some reliable sources in the business vouched for her, so I gave her a shot. But that's all I know, Jason. She went by the handle Deadly, and she was as mysterious as they come. No questions, no personal information. The information, or lack thereof, didn't provide much to go on. She was a ghost, a shadow, and it was clear that she wanted to remain that way. I left the owner's office with a sense of frustration and determination. It was a start, but there was much more to discover about this enigmatic woman who had infiltrated not just my life, but the Midnight Serpent's world. I wasted no time in dialing Rico's number again, urgency in my voice, as I shared the limited information I'd gathered from the club's owner regarding the woman known as Deadly. But as I detailed what I knew, Rico's response was filled with palpable concern. "Jason," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "I ran a facial scan on the security camera recordings. It matches an Interpol agent known as Dynamite, but that's where the trail goes cold. There's no further information on her, just this one alias." His words sent a shiver down my spine. An Interpol agent infiltrating our world was a nightmare scenario. Rico's concern was valid, and I could hear the unease in his voice. "Damn it," I muttered, my mind racing to assess the implications. "You're right, Rico. If Interpol is involved, none of our assets are safe. We need to consider moving them, at least until we figure out what's going on. We can't afford to let the authorities get any closer to us." The city's neon glow outside the window seemed to pulse with uncertainty, and I knew that our world was on the brink of a dangerous shift. The woman known as Deadly, her true identity as Dynamite, was now a formidable adversary, and it was imperative that we unraveled the mystery she represented before it was too late. The tension in the room was palpable as I entered the meeting with my gang, the Midnight Serpents. My henchmen, my loyal but volatile comrades, were seething with anger. They didn't mince words, and their accusations cut through the smoky air of our underground hideout. One of the hot-headed members, Carlos, stepped forward, his voice dripping with contempt. "Jason, your reckless desires have put us all in jeopardy. This woman, Deadly, or whatever she's called, is Interpol, for God's sake. We're exposed, vulnerable, and it's your damn impulsiveness that's to blame." I locked eyes with Carlos, my own anger simmering beneath the surface. But I knew that now wasn't the time for conflict within our ranks. I needed to regain control of the situation. "Listen up," I began, my voice firm but laced with a subtle undercurrent of warning. "We're in a tight spot, no doubt about it. But we've faced worse, and we've always come out on top. We need to be smart about this. Rico's working on a plan, and we'll find a way to deal with this Interpol agent." I had managed to defuse the confrontation for the moment, but it was clear that my leadership was on the line. The Midnight Serpents needed results, and fast. We couldn't afford to let our guard down with the law closing in, and I was determined to prove that I could navigate the treacherous waters of this perilous game we played. Returning to Neon Noir that night, I chose one of the familiar girls from the lineup, as I often did. But as she danced provocatively before me, I found myself unable to shake the memories of the mysterious woman known as Deadly. It was an internal struggle, one that defied logic. I should have despised her for what she had done, for exposing my gang to the Interpol's watchful eye. But there was something about her, something that lingered in my thoughts and refused to fade. The girl before me, while beautiful in her own right, seemed vulgar in comparison to Deadly's elegance. Her movements lacked the grace that had so captivated me, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of detachment. As I watched her, the neon lights of the club danced around us, casting eerie shadows. It was a stark reminder of the tangled web that had woven itself around my life. I had to find Deadly, Not just to protect my gang, but to unravel the enigma that she had become, a puzzle that defied logic and reason. The dancer before me, apparently catching on to my distracted state, pouted and leaned closer. Her words carried a hint of jealousy. "What's wrong, JC? Is she more beautiful than me?" "That damn hoofer couldn't even dance, you know. I had to teach her everything she knows." Her words were like a gift wrapped in an envious tone. I leaned in, my voice low and conspiratorial, as I replied, "No, darling. There's no comparison between you and her. But there's something I need to know. You worked with her, right? You might have picked up a few things about her, and I'm curious. What do you know about Deadly?" I've got a thing for mysteries, you see. I watched her closely, gauging her reaction. It was clear that she was no fan of Deadly, and I hoped that her jealousy might be the key to unlocking the secrets of the woman who had infiltrated my life. Milena's response held a hint of amusement, and she leaned in even closer, her lips almost brushing against my ear. "Well, JC," she purred, "when you walked into the club that night, Deadly did mention that you were hot. But then again, that's something we all think, isn't it?" Her words were tantalizing, and I couldn't help but offer a faint smile. It seemed that Deadly, despite her cryptic nature, had recognized something in me that others in our world had also noticed. But there was more to uncover about her, and I needed to delve deeper into this mystery to protect my gang and our secrets. The notion that Deadly might have found me attractive, even in the midst of her clandestine mission, was an intriguing thought. But as I pondered it, I couldn't help but question why this detail mattered to me. Why did it linger in my thoughts? As I sipped my drink, the club's neon lights casting an otherworldly glow, I realized that there was something about Deadly, something that I couldn't quite put my finger on. The attraction was undeniable, but it wasn't just physical. It was as if she had awakened a curiosity in me, a desire to unravel the enigma she had become. I couldn't deny that my emotions were entangled in this mystery, and it was a vulnerability I was reluctant to explore. In the unforgiving world of the city's underworld, emotions could be exploited. But there was no denying that Deadly had left her mark, both in my thoughts and, it seemed, in the minds of others. I had to proceed with caution, for the Interpol agent was a formidable adversary. But the lines between duty and desire had become blurred, and I found myself walking a dangerous path that could lead to unforeseen consequences. As Milena perched herself on my lap, her closeness and her enticing presence were impossible to ignore. She seemed to be waiting for something from me, a response that I was not willing to give. But I knew I needed her to share any information she had about Deadly. I allowed her to stay there for a moment, savoring the sensation, before I gently placed a hand on her hip, gently urging her to sit beside me. With a faint smile, I spoke softly, "Milena, you're something special, and I appreciate your company. But right now, I need to focus on something, or someone else. If you know anything more about Deadly, anything at all, it would be in both of our interests for you to share it." I held her gaze, hoping that her jealousy and curiosity would outweigh any desire for physical attention. Milena reached into her lingerie to retrieve a small locker key. She handed it to me, her expression a mix of jealousy and curiosity. "That's the key to our locker room," she said, her voice a sultry whisper. "Deadly used to change in there too, if that's the only thing you care about." I took the key, my fingers closing around it, a feeling of triumph washing over me. The locker room could be a treasure trove of information, and it was a step closer to understanding Deadly's presence and her true intentions. I placed a hand on Milena's cheek, offering a reassuring smile. "Thanks, darling. You've been more helpful than you know." With that, I excused myself, leaving Milena behind as I made my way toward the locker room, eager to unlock the secrets it might hold. The locker room held an air of secrecy, and it was clear that not just anyone could gain access. Among the rows of lockers, only one was locked, and I couldn't help but wonder if it had been Deadly's locker. I took a moment to examine the lock, then decided to break it open. Inside, my hunch proved right, as I found a single piece of paper. It was a receipt, and it appeared to be a payment confirmation for a bank account. This was valuable information, and I knew it needed to be handled carefully. I slipped the receipt into my pocket, making a mental note to pass it along to my hacker Rico.